Welcome back, everybody, to Disc Media, a startup story, the podcast where we take you behind the scenes of starting a business from the ground up. And today we are going to be getting into a topic that I know is near and dear to a lot of business owners because it is something that is really important. I would say when we talk about business and we talk about sales and marketing and finance and all of that wonderful stuff that kind of brings in revenue, we also want to try and stop the revenue from bleeding out of the company. And one of the ways that can sometimes happen is through a lack of security, through a lack of really understanding where our holes and where our leaks are. But even more so, how do we make sure that our people are trained up in a way that really helps to ensure that we're focused on security through the people we have rather than security just through compliance alone? And so today we have a cybersecurity expert joining us today, Robert Siciliano. Robert, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you for taking the time and coming on to talk about this, which, you know, cybersecurity is such in the news all the time. We hear about data breaches. We hear about our information being out there on the dark web, and a lot of people don't even really quite understand what that is supposed to mean, the dark web. But you kind of live in this space of security and information. And I'm curious, you mentioned before we got started, you've been doing this for a number of years. What got you into this focus area in the first place?
Yeah, my background and my story is definitely different than anybody's. Every time I get off the platform, I speak for a living, right? I get in front of hundreds of people at a time and talk about these issues that we all face. And I get off the platform, and inevitably somebody comes up to me at the end and they go, "So, are you like formal law enforcement, CIA, Secret Service, like military? Like, what's your background?" I'm like, "Man, I'm from the streets of Boston. Like, literally, that is it." And I mean, yeah, I've had all kinds of certification training over the years, but what I am fundamentally is a professional communicator. And my passion, my topic, my focus, my life's work is security awareness training. And these days, I don't even like the phrase security awareness training. I actually call it security appreciation training. But all that said, when I was 12 in downtown, my dad let us go into downtown Boston at 12 years old, get on the train, head into town. We get off the train, we get up on the street, and there's 5 kids waiting for us up there that mugged me and my little brother. I was 12, he was 8. They beat us up, took our money, and I go home beaten and bloodied. And my dad's like, "Oh, yeah, today, those boys, they were the wolves, and you and your brother, well, you're the rabbits." I'm like, "All right, what's next?" And so about a year later, I was at summer camp. And, a lot of kids went to summer camp still today. And I met a girl. She was like my first crush. And we're going on like 46, 47 years ago, 45 years ago, actually. And I liked this girl. She liked me. And we're on the bus holding hands and such. And we get off the bus at her stop one day. And we're sitting on her front stairs, and she says to me, like, she had this solemn look on her face, and she says, "I think you should know that my mother's boyfriend assaulted me." And I didn't know what she was talking about. So I go home and I ask my dad, like, "Dad," because I truly didn't know what she meant. Because again, this is 40 something years ago. We didn't have those conversations. Kids didn't know. And so I learned about the birds and the bees and assault in the same conversation at the age of 13. And so between my multiple attack situation and her assault, it had a profound effect in the way I viewed the world. I didn't see things the way other kids did. And so from that point on, like, it just became a mission for me to understand personal protection, predators and thieves, how they operate. And I wanted to understand personal protection so that I could teach others, girls, what to do. And so I built a business in my teens to do that. And by my early to mid 20s, I was teaching, and I still do, real estate agents on personal protection, because realtors are murdered in the US. It's a thing. And they also handle a lot of sensitive information. And so in the mid 90s, I'm teaching agents personal protection. I had a product line selling pepper sprays and stun guns and videos on self-defense and speaking to realtors on personal protection. And my first computer in 95 was an IBM PS1 Consultant with a Windows 3.0 with a 150 megabyte hard drive. I had to buy a separate card for dial-up connection to AOL. Like the internet was AOL.
Yep.
I don't even know if we called it the internet. We just called it AOL, right?
Yeah, it was just dial-up service.
Yeah, DSL, whatever it was, right? And so I had the ability to accept credit cards via my computer as a point of sale. And within a month of connecting to AOL and having merchant status, I got hacked. In 95, I lost like over $3,000 in credit card fraud. And like my business was personal security. And personal security then and now is basically violence and theft prevention. You know, it's protecting you from predators, right? From harm, whether it's financially or physically, right? And so back then, like I did not know that you could be stolen from or robbed virtually. I did not know that was a thing. And it really wasn't a thing that like was common at that point. And when it happened to me, the financial loss was like significant to me, but like what they did and how they did it was amazing to me. Like, frankly, it was awesome. Like what they did was awesome. Like, how do you do that? You know? And so as I investigated it, I started to see that like in certain pockets of society, of culture, of business, of government, it was becoming an issue, but it really wasn't talked about all that much. I don't even know if John McAfee and others had really created antivirus yet at that point. I'm not quite sure. You may know more than me. And so I started to see identity theft becoming a thing. And I realized like, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And like financially, the rate at which and the speed and efficiency of it and the lack of accountability, I'm thinking this is going to be huge. So my focus in regards to personal protection evolved with that hack. And it became more than security in the physical world. It became security, you know, in the virtual world as well. And here we are, you know, 30 something years later, and it's just gotten worse.
Yeah. Robert, it's funny, as you were telling that story, I thought about back in the early 90s, to your point, we didn't really think about cybersecurity as a thing. And here's how much we didn't. I distinctly remember my father used to get his social security number printed on his checks because you could, and it made it easier for the cashier because oftentimes they would ask for some form of ID to write on your check in case there was fraud. And so he just had it printed on his checks. And you would go to the gas station and your receipt would have your credit card number printed out on it.
Yeah. Military had their social security number on their laundry bag. I think farmers had it like burnt on the side of their trucks for like feed pickups or something to that effect. Farmers would know better than me. We had it on our driver's licenses. Like the social security number was never meant to have as much responsibility as it does today. It was meant for social security benefits, but through something called functionality creep, it crept into other aspects of our lives, which it was never intended to do so. And the weight of that social and how it's used today obviously has caused significant problems. And now thousands of people's identities are stolen monthly at this point.
So your personal experience really fueled this passion of wanting to protect people from a very early age.
Yeah, it's kind of in my DNA. Like, to be perfectly frank, it's a little problematic. My protective nature kind of sometimes solving that risk management problem as a dad of two girls, it just kind of gets in the way sometimes. Like I get, you know, Daddy, why does your brain go there? You know, it's like, I just can't help it.
Yeah, no, same here. Have two girls of my own, and it is one of those things. You just have this heightened sense of awareness for the creeps in the world out there.
Yeah, I can't turn it off. Like, and I have actually, and I don't usually talk about this, but I have a Belgian Malinois as my dog. Yeah, she's more like a hyena than she is a dog, and I'm kind of like the human version of a Belgian Malinois in that regard. And then the rest of my pets, I've got 5 snakes, which of course are all predators. And I've had, I think at this point, 5 scorpions. And I've had 1 tarantula whose name is Ms. Cuddles for the past 12 years. So my life is surrounded by predators.
As the internet became a thing, as people got more into computing and this whole cybersecurity industry started to emerge, What was that pivot point for you where you really leaned more into this?
Yeah, so I had been speaking on realtor safety throughout the 90s. I'd written a couple of books already. Back in the day, I did like the Montel Williams show, Sally Jesse Raphael, Gordon Elliott. I did the Howard Stern show a couple of times in the 90s. I did lots of like MSNBC, CNBC, like all the national TV morning shows and such, like just kind of bringing attention to the book and to personal protection. I did Gayle King before Gayle King was Gayle King. And just for fun, just to bring attention to the brand and to sell books, really. And but when 9/11 hit, that was like the pivotal point, because I had been talking about personal protection for years at that point. And when 9/11 hit, like personal protection actually meant something more at that time. And so my phone started to ring differently. Like people were now awake and aware of risk in a different way. And there weren't many voices out there speaking to risk management for personal protection. And so anybody that could string two words together in that regard was now, like me, was now in the media. And so I spent a lot of time through the aughts in the tens and up until today doing lots of TV, radio, and print in that regard. And because I'm able to break down what might be considered a complex issues in bite-sized chunks for regular everyday people. Like I don't speak tech. I speak in plain English. And when you're speaking to an audience that, and even still today, if I get in front of an audience tomorrow, one of the questions they'll ask me is, how do I know what links are okay to click when I do search on Google? That's where the public is today. That's their digital, literacy today. That's their cyber hygiene today. They just don't know what links are okay to click on Google. How do I protect my credit cards? These are the questions that they ask because they just don't know. And that has not changed. And it hasn't changed because we as humans, we don't actually look at risk effectively. We don't want to engage in security. And what that truly means is like, we trust by default. As human beings, we are an interdependent species. And interdependent means we are dependent upon each other for our survival, for procreation. We want to and need to trust that each other has our best interest in mind, that they aren't going to hurt or harm us. Like that's our default. Not trusting others is actually not very normal, meaning like not trusting others is usually a result of somebody doing harm to us, trauma, somebody betraying us or physically harming us. And so those lessons that we learn usually early on in life of others, some others aren't trustworthy, we kind of shy away from that stuff. We would rather not even think about that. We would not revisit that. And we don't necessarily learn.
It's not going to happen to me kind of thing.
Denial, man. Denial is wonderful. Like denial allows us to function in a pretty messed up universe that like is hurtling through around the sun and just spinning wildly. And like, we just don't even recognize like just how dangerous the world is because we are able to function in denial pretty much all the time. Getting on an airplane, getting in a car, like you've got to function at a certain level of denial, understanding the actual risks that go on in that venture. So all that said, like when I get in front of a live audience, one of the questions I ask them is, how many of you have a home security system? Because my presentations are a dialogue. I have a conversation with them. And I ask them, like, how many of you have a home security system? If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand, that's a lot, which means like 85% don't, right? And so I say, okay, so why don't you have the home security system? And I ask these questions to kind of like point out like, what security isn't, the absurdities of why we look at security all the wrong ways. And this is like qualifying questions to challenge their belief systems. And so why don't you have the home security system? And the answers are usually like, we have insurance. Therefore, why do we need a home security system? As if insurance is going to protect you at 3 a.m. when some whack job comes in with a gun, right? Or we don't have a home security system because my husband says, if they're going to break in, they're going to break in. What are we going to do?
We don't live in an area where that stuff happens.
Oh, like it never happens here. We'll talk about that. And so, and then they say, well, the reason why we don't have a home security system is because I don't want to live like that. I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to have to worry. I just want to be free. Like people literally say that to me.
Yeah.
And what they're saying is I would rather function in denial. I don't want an ongoing reminder of a keypad of an alarm system that there's bad people doing bad things. I just don't want to have to think about that. Therefore, if I don't have one, then it's not going to happen to me. So they're truly choosing to function in denial. And it's like, and I say, okay, so when you're watching the 6 o'clock news and something bad, something tragic happens in a neighborhood somewhere, and the local news channel goes into the neighborhood with the reporter and the camera guy and the fuzzy mic, and they knock on the neighbor's door. The neighbor comes outside, they're interviewing the neighbor. What does the neighbor always say?
They were so quiet and nice.
And about the neighborhood?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Those things don't happen here.
Yeah, they always say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That's because we all want to think it's never going to happen here. And that's just how we are as a culture. That's how we are as a society. We don't look at risk effectively. We deny the existence of bad actors. And instead, we just do nothing. And so we've got an entire culture of security awareness training that's being provided by force, compliance, do this or else. And we expect that the learner, the user, the employee is going to engage in risk management effectively if they don't lock their doors or manage their passwords or know what link to click on Google. And we're trying to like stuff security awareness training down their throat without even actually having a conversation with them. This is what I know. This is what I see. When I am hired, it's because the CISO is exasperated. We just want our people to care about security. That's all we want. Just get them to care. That's where we're at right now. And it doesn't need to be like that. There's a way to fix this.
Yeah, it's one of the things. I have this conversation every once in a while with people, and not because I'm trying to say that I'm a creeper out there looking this stuff up, but I tell people all the time, you would be amazed what information is already out there on the internet about you. And it's not even hard to find. Anybody with half a sense can do a whole profile on someone just based off of public information or things that you can pull off the web. That doesn't even include when you dive deeper into some of the more nefarious places on the internet, what you can find out about a person. I mean, it's just all out there.
That's exactly correct. Every single presentation I do, people say, so I get a notification from Experian that my information is on the dark web. What do I do?
There's nothing you can do.
Yeah,
it's already done.
So then I go into I explain to them, okay, the sky is blue, water is wet, chocolate is yummy, your information is on the dark web. It is a fact of life at this point. Okay.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? What do you do about that? The idea is to make the data that the bad guy has access to useless to the thief. Oh, well, what does that actually mean? Okay, so, and I explain to them and I actually show them. I show them that this is how you engage the learner. You show them. So I went to the dark web. I downloaded 21 million credentials, email addresses, and passcodes from the dark web, right? In one big text file. Actually, there's about maybe 30 different files in one folder, right? And I show them. I actually like pull them up. I go, look, and I show them the usernames, the email addresses, and the passcodes. These are people's credentials. And they look at that and they go, oh, those poor people. I'm like, yeah, those poor people are you. It's me. It's all of us. It's everybody. And I explained to them, there are 15 billion stolen credentials, passwords on the dark web. This is everybody. And so like every presentation that I do, I walk in the room because, the CISO is making them come there. And I'm introduced and I look out at the audience. In every single presentation I do, for those of you who are just listening, I'm crossing my arms right now and I've got a scowl on my face. This is what the audience looks like, right? They're looking at me, okay, security guy, what are you going to tell me that I don't already know? And as I'm explaining all of this to them, then I'm asking them, how many of you can honestly say that you use a different passcode across each of your critical accounts? If I get 15% of the room, that's a lot. How many of you are using two-factor authentication across all your critical accounts, including email? Including email. If I get 20% of the room, because it's usually more required, that's a lot. So, and I tell them, okay, so based on your responses, 80 to 90% of you are using the same passcode across multiple accounts, and you're not using two-factor authentication. And so then I show them 21 million credentials, including the passcodes. And what happens is they're like, oh, okay, all right, this is what those data breaches are about. This is what they mean when they say my information is on the dark web. Oh, now I understand what that means. And what happens is their arms that are crossed begin to go down. The scowl becomes an inquisitive look. And now they physically, literally lean into the conversation, like their whole physical body, their language changes. And now as their arms go down, their hands begin to go up because now they got questions. Now they want to know, right? Which is what security awareness training should be, but it isn't. We're just saying, hey, do this, pay attention to this, or else. These are the repercussions. And it's like, I don't talk to my daughters like that. I could never talk to my wife like that. I mean, forget about that. Like, it's a dialogue. It's a conversation. Like, people want to know. People are literally afraid. They don't know what to do. They've never had an opportunity to talk to anybody who has a clue about this stuff. And the CISO is just like frustrated. You tell them not to click the link and they still click the link. What am I going to do? And it's like, well, is that how you talk to your parents? Is that how you talk to your mom who doesn't quite understand that, like, when she gets that email that, you just have to talk to her. You have to, like, walk her through the process. Like, you kind of have to a little bit, work with her on this because they're just human, and most don't really see it as that. They see it as an overwhelming task that there needs to be metrics regarding the training, and it needs to show results, and otherwise I'm not compliant and I'm not going to get my budget for my next whatever. And it's like, that's where we're at. And that's insufficient.
So earlier you mentioned, this is really kind of a coaching behavior. Phishing scams, things that come in. I mean, they're getting more and more sophisticated. And AI certainly is only adding a new layer of a new toolkit in the arsenal of things that scammers can use to try and take advantage of people. And we talked about trust because a lot of times when you overtrust, there's the old saying of trust but verify. It's not bad to have trust, but we need to be cautious about that trust. How do we move people from a place where compliance or else to better behaviors and being able to still trust, but also be protected?
It's a multi-pronged process that's relatively easy to do, but it begins with challenging people's belief systems. First and foremost, what their understanding of security is and isn't. As we've already discussed here, it's not about like, I always tell my audiences, like, and I say right up front, I'm a guy that's got 22 security cameras. Okay. And I say, so you don't know me. Maybe you don't know what I do for a living. Let's just say, right? I'm this guy that you find out that has 22 security cameras. What might be your first response regarding my disposition, my understanding of the world around me? I wake up every day. I must be what?
I would think people would say you're paranoid, but I wouldn't.
Well, yeah, because you're a thinking man, right?
You've got 18 more cameras than I do.
Yeah. So I spoke to 200 CISOs at a university in Kentucky not too long ago, and I asked 200 CISOs, I got 20 plus security cameras. What does that make me? 200 CISOs, one loud roar, paranoid, which was really funny, actually. And they all kind of looked at each other laughing, like it was funny. But the fact that we as a culture assimilate and associate security and paranoia to any degree is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because that dichotomy basically prevents a challenge for us to embrace what security actually is, which paranoia, as we know, is a mental health issue. It's a disease of the mind. Right? It is someone who truly, honestly does believe that people are out to get them. They do believe that others are trying to harm them. They are at odds with themselves and their universe at all times. And if they're not properly medicated, and even if they are medicated, they still generally aren't grounded. And I know this firsthand because I have a first cousin right now that, well, she's always been my first cousin, but she might be living in her car right now because her disease just manipulates every aspect of her being. Okay. That said, we associate security and that. Why would you ever want security if it's about paranoia? So the process begins with breaking down what security is and what security isn't. Recognizing risk means, first of all, understanding what security is. It's about control. It's not about paranoia. And as you, again, break all that down, and then you understand like what trust is and how we have what I call, and this is part of the process, we have what I call the human blind spot. Okay. What is it? How can it be fixed? The human blind spot is the psychological instinct to trust each other, to trust what's familiar. And I consider it like this cognitive gap where biological trust overrides digital suspicion, leaving the door wide open for all kinds of fraud, AI enhanced deception. I mean, you name it. That biological default to trust and psychological shortcuts, basically the heuristics that criminals use to bypass human logic, manufactured urgency, all that stuff. So think of it like as biological impulse versus intellectual understanding, okay? It's that internal conflict between our evolved survival instincts and our modern understanding or lack of understanding of digital risks. And so once we understand that we trust by default, and like every day when you meet with people that you want to and need to give them the benefit of the doubt, and that all those phone calls you get and emails you received and text messages, that like to a certain degree, you want to believe that the person on the other end has your best interest in mind, that they don't mean to hurt or harm you. Like that's how we are. We don't want to think we're going to get hurt, but we're not necessarily thinking in those terms. And as you explain that, like, and this is true, you can do your own research. I've come to the conclusion that 97% of all the people that you ever have or ever will meet in the course of your life, 97% are worthy of your trust. What that basically means is like 97% of the world's population have good intentions, that they don't necessarily mean to do harm. They occasionally lie, they occasionally deceive, they occasionally do harm, but that's not their general nature. Whereas 3 to as much as 6%, it's said that about 3% of women and as much as 6% of men suffer from what we call, and suffer may not be the right word, but the medical community calls them antisocial personality disorders. You and I know them as like sociopaths and psychopaths, right? These are the people in our lives that literally like experience no sympathy, empathy, guilt, remorse, that they truly are the definition of having no shame. They're the bad actors. They're the wolves. They're the lions. They're in human form, the predators. And when you explain that and you point that out, like Jeffrey Dahmer was a good looking guy and he liked to eat people. And the criminal hackers, the organized criminals like worldwide that like engage in human trafficking slaves to conduct their scams, they don't care if your mother ends up broken, homeless on the street. They just want every single dime she has in the bank. And so
it's just a transaction, and a transaction with a self-motivated purpose.
And they don't care about anybody but themselves. And I've heard 1,000 times, if these criminals, if these hackers would just take what they know and in their skills, they could cure cancer. And I'm like, yeah, no, they don't care about curing cancer. All they care about is getting paid. They care about themselves. They don't care about you or your loved ones, at all. They don't care if you off yourself, or your father offs himself because he lost everything. They don't care about that. They think it's funny, and so as you break it all down and explain what's really happening out there, then they begin to go, okay, all right. And they literally lead in. And they literally are now begin to ask questions. And what they say to me at the end of the presentation is like, I'm here because I was told to be here. I didn't really think I wanted to come here today. But you know what? I'm so glad that I did because I didn't think it was going to be like this. And you know what? Like, I really wish that my spouse was here today because he or she would have learned a lot. Do you do programs for high schools? Like they're not getting the type of information, edutech, from their CISO as they could or should to really like get them in their self in order. I call it, coming from the background that I do, it would make sense that my philosophy is that all security is personal. And what that truly means is like the core belief that people protect what they love, right? By teaching someone to secure their child's digital footprint, their own identity, protecting their own home, having a conversation with their daughter who's going off to college about sexual assault and how to avoid risk. You make employees more secure at home by getting them to recognize risk in their personal lives first. When you're on the plane and the flight attendant is providing the safety instructions and she talks about the oxygen mask when it drops, what does she say to do?
Put yours on first before you put the mask on the person next to you.
And why is that?
Because if you're not around, there ain't going to be anybody to save that person next to you.
Doesn't that make sense?
100%, yeah.
And when the audience hears that analogy, they're like, so what you're saying is, if I understand how to protect my own identity and I know how to deal with like protecting my own stuff, my own data, my own dollars, getting a credit freeze, protecting my social security number, getting push notifications for my credit cards, then when I engage in the phishing simulation training, I basically have an understanding already of what this is about. And now, like when I actually am challenged with that, I have a full understanding of the motivation behind the hacker and what they do and how they do it. So therefore, like I have a better chance of like, you know, like getting a passing grade there. That makes sense to me. Okay, yeah, all right. So what do I got to do next? Like it makes sense to them. This is how we engage the learner so that they begin to look at risk as something that they want to embrace. Look at, we put the seatbelt on, we click it because it gives us control over the seat of the vehicle. It prevents us from ending up in the passenger seat if we swerve. It gives us control over the steering wheel and the gas and the brakes. Like all that makes sense. You don't put the seatbelt on because you're afraid or because you're paranoid or because you worry. You do it because it's smart. And if
it's about, a lot of security is about kind of proactive, preemptive steps. Are you going to prevent something from happening? Probably not. But you will be better protected when it does happen, so that it's about risk mitigation, not complete risk avoidance. Yeah. And it's interesting because I always tell people, like, I don't know any of my passwords. I got to look them up. And I don't write them down. Like I have password managers that help me with that, but I don't know any of my passwords. And I figure if I don't know them, other people don't know them either. And then I cycle them on a regular basis to make sure that they're different if they happen to get out there. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job. And then I was listening to a cybersecurity expert recently, and they said, your banking information, don't use your email address. Like whatever email address you use for all of your email, create a special email address just for your financial information and don't use it for anything else but that. And that simple little thing, like, is something I hadn't even thought of before. When somebody has your email address, they really have the stepping stones to a lot of other things.
As they say, own the email, you own the person. And most of the major SIM swaps we see that result in 6- and 7-figure crypto scams as a result are usually because somebody's using the same passcode on their email as they were for their Facebook or whatever else. And either they were phished or the information was found on the dark web. Once they log into their email, now they can just reset the passcode for everything, including their mobile phone account. They swap out their SIM and now they got access to their, Coinbase account. That's not that complicated. And it would make sense to use a different email address for your most critical accounts and maybe even, break it up a little bit for most people. Yeah. But the problem is, like, if you make security even just a little bit complicated, even a little bit difficult for people, they're not going to engage at all. Whenever I explain a password manager, 100% of the time, the first question is, yeah, well, what if the password manager gets hacked? Like they come up like these fatalistic excuses to not engage in tools that are designed to manage risk because they don't know what link to click on Google to begin with. And I explained to them, okay, yes, password managers have been hacked, yes. But to the degree where all of our data has been stolen in plain text, I'm like, that's not the low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit is the fact that you're using the same passcode on multiple accounts and that it's on the dark web. That's the low hanging fruit. By engaging a password manager, you can get like a string of characters that are like 30, characters long that you're never going to remember. You don't need to. And ultimately, like, it makes you a tougher target. It's making small changes. Like, when you work with them to that degree and like just incremental small things that you do, I mean, literally, if most of the public was to just and only adopt a password manager where they had a different passcode across multiple accounts, that's one thing. Use two-factor authentication on everything, that's two things, right? Those two things, you'd be ahead of 90% of the population, because 90% of the population is using the same passcode across multiple accounts and not using two-factor authentication. I mean, those
that they've been using it for years.
Yeah. So when you make it that easy, then they're like, okay, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? I got to tell my mom, I got to tell my dad, I got to tell my wife. And what this results in is what I call the kitchen table effect. And the kitchen table effect is when employees take the training that you provide home and they talk about it around the kitchen table and they discuss it with their family members, you cement those lessons for life. That's what it should be.
So when you think about, you've been talking to audiences for some time, you've been on this topic for some time. What would you, thinking back on your experience, what would you say is one of those moments that really kind of moved the needle on the things, like something that really hit home as you've been doing this work?
The answer that first comes to mind is not the answer you're expecting. Twice in my career, early on, and then probably about 10 years ago, I actually scared two different people. Meaning, like, I actually presented a program and provided advice and provided examples, and I actually like caused like visible fright in the audience. Like, I moved people in such a way where I scared them. People do generally just want to get through the day, and they generally don't know what to do unless they have the right guidance. Like, if you kind of look at like what's going on in the world and who's in charge and who's leading things and what we're gravitating towards, it's all kind of messy. It's not really good. It's all kind of ugly, leadership, everything else. And all that said, it's like, because we don't really have much else to go by. And employees are much the same, are that. And security is one of those things, like if you look at Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of human needs, at the base of that triangle is our physiological needs. It's like nourishment, it's fluids, it's food, right? It's proper rest. Like, that's the base of the triangle. And what's right above that? Safety, stability, structure, protection. It's right there, right above a good night's sleep. And we, in our culture, we completely 100% take security for granted. Truly take it for granted. Like in Israel, since the early 90s, they are required by law in new developments to build concrete safe rooms in every single unit that they build. They do not take security for granted. That's just how it is in that country, for obvious reasons, politics aside. But we in this country, like, we don't look at security as even being necessary. Meaning, like, we don't lock our doors. I talk to real estate agents all the time, and they tell me, like, when we sell houses, half the time, the homeowner doesn't know where the house keys are. Like, they've never locked their doors. We just take it for granted. And while we live in what might be considered a relatively safe society, which I believe and agree with, there's lots of bad things happening that don't need to happen if we did a better job of recognizing risk. We don't look at each other as effectively as we could or should in regards to risk, because we're just afraid.
We want to trust.
We want to trust.
We want to think better of people, and we've just, I don't know, conditioned. And I think a lot of this even comes from primary school, of wanting to trust the people around you. And by and large, we should. It's funny. I talk about this sometimes. I tend to be, I'm open but cautious, right? But I generally trust people. I offer trust when I first meet people, and you got to pop up on my radar for me to start to pull back some. But, and I know there's people out there who they're not that way. They're guarded. They don't trust anybody. Like, you got to earn that trust. And my approach has been, I'm going to meet 10 people. And if 2 or 3 of them end up being people I can't trust, I can go one of 2 ways. I can either shut myself off to everybody because of these 2 or 3 people, or I can say, that's a shame, but at least I met 7 or 8 good people. And I tend to want to lean into the I met 7 or 8 good people, then shut myself down because of the 2 or 3 idiots that took advantage of me.
So we all should do that. And I think most of us do that. I trust pretty much everybody. I want to trust pretty much everybody. But in that same breath, I'm also actively recognizing risk. So, and I don't worry about any of these things. Look, I go to the grocery store, and every time I go to the grocery store, I'm paying attention to my surroundings. Risk management. I'm looking at the people around me. I don't go to the grocery store worried that someone's going to walk in and shoot up the place. But I go to the grocery.
It's also not possible.
But I go to the grocery store looking to see if there's going to be somebody there to shoot up the place. So I am cognitively recognizing risk when I am out and about. I am looking around the perimeter of my body. I am paying attention to my surroundings. Situational awareness in your physical world and situational awareness in the virtual world should be or is one of the same thing. So as I'm receiving those text messages and emails, I'm paying attention to what's the motivation behind this. As I am at the grocery store, I'm paying attention to my surroundings. Who might be paying unwanted attention? Who's acting aggressively? Who's doing something that maybe they shouldn't be? Who has a backpack on? I am just consciously looking around the perimeter of my body. I don't worry about any of these things, but I'm aware of what's going on around me. Why? Because why not? I can. I have eyes. I have the ability to see and do and function. And so I'm just paying attention. I go to a concert and I'm with my wife who's probably, had a few drinks, maybe even a gummy, and she's just dancing left and right. And I'm still paying attention to the exits, who's had too much alcohol in my row, the guy behind me, is he going to spill his drink on me? I'm paying attention to my surroundings and watching the show. Why? Because I don't want to end up on the floor because somebody knocks me over. And if there's a fire, I want to know what my exits are. Do I worry about these things? Absolutely not. I'm just consciously aware and paying attention. Most people aren't doing even the basics, which I still trust that pretty much 99.99% of all the people at the show have good intentions and they're just going to have a good time and we're all going to leave and everything's going to be fine. But there's going to be one idiot there who's going to do something stupid. He may not necessarily shoot the place up, but he's going to have too much alcohol and do something dumb. And so I'm just looking out for him because I don't want him to ruin my good time that I spent $500 friggin' dollars a ticket on.
So, Robert, when you thinking about the audience, those who are listening to this, what is something that, like a primary takeaway you can think of that people can walk away with that can help to improve even just a little bit?
Okay. I'm going to do this in a couple of different parts. I've developed what I call the strategic human firewall. And the mindset and the methodology behind the strategic human firewall does not have to be delivered by me. It can be delivered by anybody who understands risk management. You and I understand these concepts perfectly. And everybody in the audience understands these concepts perfectly, right? Basically, the strategic human firewall is the ultimate defense against deception. It's creating a defensive network, right? It's a proactive governance, is essentially what it is, that they can be translated anywhere. It's a mindset that transforms employees from passive targets into active detection layers. It's situational awareness, right? It marks the fundamental shift from I trust what I see, I trust by default, to I verify everything. Most security awareness training is a monologue, right? It's the learner being talked at regarding with, right? It relies on the hammer approach. It's a barrage of don'ts or else threats that only breed resentment and apathy. That's what security awareness training is today. True security appreciation, which is the camp that I come from, requires a dialogue, All right. Instead of blunt force, we use a scalpel, right? Engaging the wetware, the human brain, right? Their fears, their worries, their concerns through interactive inquiry. Doesn't that make sense? Asking the right questions, providing straight talk, answers that stick. We move beyond the hammer and you close the security appreciation gap, which builds a culture of genuine vigilance. Make the employees part of the process of risk management by making security personal to them first. Currently, we put the cart before the horse. Security appreciation, the strategic human firewall, is putting the horse up front. It's the difference between you are going on this long multi-mile hike, woods that you've never been to, and you got a map, right? If you don't do it right, you can end up stranded in the woods. Woods can be very dangerous, okay? And so before you embark on that journey with that map, wouldn't it be good to kind of sit down with a guide, somebody who's done it before, somebody who like has walked those trails that can tell you, okay, so at this point in the map, right here, you're going to see a ridge, and beyond that ridge, there's a body of water. Now you know you're here, giving them some perspective so that once they get there, they know what fork in the road to take. We're not doing that right now. And so beyond that, what really scares me today, and I've been saying for all the years that I do what I do, that, don't worry about any of this stuff, but just do something about it. The worst thing you could do is nothing. Don't worry. I'm a little worried now. I don't tell my audiences that, but I'm a little worried now. And what I'm worried about is the fact that AI and deepfakes and voice cloning is perfect. It really is perfect at this point. I have never seen more high dollar frauds happening in such a concentrated period of time than the past 3 to 5 years. I am coming in close contact with, hugging and crying with men and women who have lost 6 and 7 figures. Our parents, people that we associate with, that like get a wrong number text message and 3 months later they mortgage their house and everything's gone. Like it happens that fast. The criminal enterprises today, and I mentioned this earlier, they're using like human slave labor. Like the UN estimates right now that as many as 300,000 men and women are being held captive against their will in human trafficking solely for cybercrime right now as we speak. Southeast Asia. Okay. These compounds are like, thousands of acres and they've got, 2,000, 3,000 people at a time who are engaged 18 hours a day to scam us. They've got scripts. They're sending text messages, emails, making phone calls. They're paying attention to our social media. They've got access to billions of our records. They know our profile. And AI, along with organized crime, has stripped away the clumsy red flags of traditional fraud. Like you said, like the emails are just so more sophisticated. In the past, of course, criminals relied on blunder force phishing, mass blasting emails riddled with scammer grammar. You don't see that anymore, right? Today, generative AI allows for high precision impersonation at scale. Criminals use neural puppetry to create perfect lies. Your employees aren't prepared for that because we're just hitting them on the head with a hammer. And by scraping just seconds of audio from social media, of course, they use voice cloning to impersonate trusted sources, your CEO, a spouse. At this point, I would wager 100% accuracy. And this weaponizes our biological human blind spot, that default to trust, making deception feel and really be 100% human. AI also automates the grooming process. They do it over time. It normalizes the dialogue. It builds rapport. And it exploits what we call the loneliness loophole. What most people don't understand is that 25% of all of humanity right now as we speak, 25% wake up every day lonely. 25% of all people, right? Loneliness is absolutely perfectly natural and normal. They call it the pain and the ache of loneliness. And it is exactly the same thing as hunger pains. Hunger pains are within us so that we are motivated to find and forage food, sustenance. If you were never ever hungry, you wouldn't eat. That's just how it works, right? Ozempic, Manjaro, all that stuff is designed to turn something off in your brain so you don't experience hunger, right? If we were never hungry, we wouldn't eat. You lose weight, right? The pains and aches of loneliness are designed to get us to gravitate towards others to procreate. That's the whole point of it. And so that loneliness loophole in AI is removing the labor of social engineering. And the criminal enterprises understand this perfectly, and it allows a predator thousands of miles away to pilot thousands of digital puppets simultaneously, bypassing technical firewalls and hacking humans.
Yeah, and then the tools are becoming more readily available and accessible. If anybody's been paying attention lately to OpenClaw, which is the ability to create a digital AI agent, and these things are doing some amazing work. And I say that in the context of the good side, not in the context of the bad side, but they can easily be turned. But yeah, these agents and tools, something you mentioned there, the ability to take audio. If you have a high-ranking executive, chances are they've probably done some media, and you could take samples of that media and then create a voice clone, and then you could call a colleague and spoof the caller ID so that it looks like a call coming from someone you know and trust, and the voice on the other side is someone you think that you know. And now they start asking for information about, hey, we're having problems with payroll. Can you share with me password, social security, like information, like we're updating some systems and we need this for. These are things that are happening. This isn't science fiction. This is stuff that is going on these days. So what do we do? Like, we've thrown a lot of stuff out there. There's a lot of things to be concerned about, but how do people reach you? How do they get you into their system so they can better prepare themselves for I would say better prepare themselves. I say better guard themselves from security vulnerabilities.
Everything that we've talked about today is really just a methodology. It's a mindset. It's a strategy to reduce risk, to manage risk in a different way. It's going from the current security awareness which is a monologue, to creating a dialogue. And if you just run with that, create a dialogue, even with, like, as a CISO talking to your COO, and really like just making that conversation like about you as the CISO, and say, hey, let's talk about security awareness training. And I just want to point something out to you, and have the conversation making security personal to the CISO. So like my mom, like my dad died like a few years back, and my mom's lonely, and like I can't get her to stop like responding to these emails and text messages, and like just make it personal to your current situation, because that COO, he's got a family member, she's got a family member in the exact same situation, or at least knows somebody in their life that's dealing with the exact same problems. We all do. We've all got somebody in our lives that's just dealing with all these problems. And it's all of our employees all have the same issues. And as you make security personal to the decision makers, then they're going to fund your budget for the additional training that you want to engage in. And at the same time, send out a broadcast communication for an all hands event, and talk about these things amongst each other and what those risks are and how we solve them together. That's something that everybody can do. That is just really creating this dialogue to kind of bring things back the same way that you would raise your family. So that said, run with it if y'all would like to. From there, right, as far as I'm concerned, Google me, Robert Siciliano, Siciliano, if you can spell it. I'm on all the socials, including LinkedIn, and I'm always publishing my most current topics on my LinkedIn profile, which has got about 15,000 people reading it, or my newsletter. Otherwise, I'm at protectnowllc.com, protectnowllc.com.
Robert, thank you so much. I really love this topic. I love getting into this stuff. I try to stay sharp. I try to keep informed and up to speed on this stuff. I don't think 20 cameras is paranoid at all. I think that's well informed.
Yeah, it's fun.
I appreciate you taking out your time to share your thoughts and your wisdom with us. For everybody else out there, thank you guys for checking out Dist Media, a startup story. We are on a path this year. Our mission to hit 100,000 YouTube subs by the end of 2026. How can you help? Tell your friends. Better yet, tell your enemies. Your enemies are more likely to take action with your words, right? So tell your enemies to like Dist Media, a startup story. Find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And, share this with others. Give us a comment, give us a review. All of that stuff really helps. And if you're really looking to fall asleep or you need some reading material, check out my new book, 10 Topics to Help Managers, Leaders, and Entrepreneurs Get Better at What They Do. That will certainly help. Anyways, folks, thank you all for checking us out. We hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good one. Thanks for listening to Dist Media, a startup story. This podcast was produced and edited by Ben Olmos and is a production of Dist Media Corporation. If you're interested in learning more about anything you heard on this episode, please reach out to us at podcast@distmedia.com. You can also get more information about this and other episodes or information about our guests by checking out dailypitch.news, our business and insights publication focused on helping managers, leaders, and entrepreneurs get better at what they do.